Welcome to Fairy Tales English Journey. Have you ever wished you could fly away in a magic box? Today we will read an amazing story about a young man who did just that. It is called The Flying Trunk. This story is filled with magic and teaches us important lessons about life and making good choices. Our story begins with a very rich merchant. This merchant had so much money that he could pave a whole street with silver coins. But he did not do that. He was a smart man who knew how to save his money. He always made sure to keep his wealth safe for his family and his future. When the old merchant passed away, all his money went to his son. The son was very different from his father. He loved to spend money on fun things. He went to parties every night and made kites out of paper money. He threw gold coins into the water just to watch them make a splash. Because he spent money so foolishly, his wealth quickly disappeared. Soon he had nothing left but 4 small copper coins. He had no nice clothes to wear. He only had an old pair of slippers and an old dressing gown. His rich friends stopped coming to visit him because they did not want to see him poor. One of his old friends felt a little bit sorry for him. This friend sent him an old wooden trunk. The friend included a note that said, "Pack your things." But the young man had nothing left to pack. He had no clothes and no treasures. So he decided to climb inside the trunk himself. This was no ordinary wooden box. It was a magic trunk. If someone pressed the lock, the trunk could fly high into the air. The young man pressed the lock and suddenly the trunk flew up the chimney. It went higher and higher into the clouds. The young man was very scared, but also very excited. The trunk flew very fast through the sky. The bottom of the trunk cracked and creaked. The young man worried that the wood might break into small pieces. If the trunk broke, he would fall a very long way down. He held his breath and hoped for the best as he traveled across the wide world. Finally, the flying trunk landed safely on the ground. The young man looked around and realized he was in a new country. He had flown all the way to Turkey. He hid his magic trunk under some dry leaves in the forest. Then he walked into the town, wearing his old dressing gown and his slippers. In this town, nobody cared about his strange clothes. Everyone wore dressing gowns and slippers. As he walked along the street, he saw a beautiful castle. The castle had high windows and tall towers. He asked a woman passing by who lived in the castle. She told him that the daughter of the king lived there. The woman explained that a prophecy said the princess would be very unhappy in love. Because of this sad prediction, no one was allowed to visit her. The young man felt very curious about this lonely princess. He wanted to see her and talk to her. He decided to use his magic trunk to visit her. He went back to the forest and climbed into his trunk. He pressed the lock and flew up to the highest tower of the castle. He opened the window and stepped into the room of the princess. The princess was sleeping on a soft bed. She looked so lovely that the young man could not look away. He kissed her hand gently and she woke up. She was very surprised to see a stranger in her room. But the young man smiled and told her a wonderful lie. He said he was a god who had flown through the sky just to see her. The princess was very happy to hear this beautiful story. They sat together and talked for a long time. The young man was very good at telling stories. He looked at her eyes and said they were like dark, beautiful lakes. He said her thoughts swam in those lakes like little mermaids. He told her many sweet things and made her feel very special and loved. Then he asked the princess to marry him. The princess liked him very much, and she quickly agreed. She told him to come back on Saturday. Her mother and father, the king and queen, would be there to meet him. She said her parents loved hearing good stories more than anything else in the whole world. The princess gave him a beautiful sword covered in gold and shiny stones. The young man took the sword and thanked her. Then he climbed back into his magic trunk and flew away. He went to the market and bought a new dressing gown. He wanted to look his best when he met the king and queen. He spent the next few days resting in the forest. He needed to think of a very good story to tell the parents of the princess. The story had to be funny, but also teach a good lesson. It was not easy to write a perfect story in such a short time. He thought very hard about it. When Saturday arrived, he flew back to the castle tower. The king and the queen were waiting for him. They had prepared a grand feast with delicious food and sweet drinks. The king asked the young man if he had a story to tell. The young man smiled and said he had a very special story ready. The young man began his story. He talked about a bundle of matches. These matches were very proud because they came from a tall green tree. They remembered the good old days in the forest. They talked about the birds who sang to them and the sunshine that kept them warm. They felt very important and grand. In the story, the matches talked to the other kitchen items. They talked to the cooking pots and the iron pans. The matches boasted about their high birth and their bright light. The cooking pot said that real life was about being useful. The pot said that boiling water was the most important job in the house. The fire tongs danced around and the plates rattled. Everyone in the kitchen wanted to be the best. The matches felt insulted because no one respected their noble history. Then the servant girl came into the kitchen. She picked up the matches and struck them against the wall. The matches burst into bright yellow flames and burned. The matches thought they were shining brighter than the sun. They believed everyone could see their great glory. But soon they burned down to nothing and turned into dark ashes. The young man finished his story and bowed to the king and queen. The king clapped his hands and laughed. He loved the story very much indeed. The queen also smiled and said it was a lovely tale. She said she felt like she was really in the kitchen with the matches. The king and queen agreed that the young man was a wonderful storyteller. They decided he was good enough to marry their daughter. They gave him their blessing to marry the princess. The wedding was planned for the very next Monday. The whole city was filled with joy and excitement. The king ordered the street lamps to be lit up. People were given free sweet bread and warm drinks. Children ran through the streets shouting with happiness. Everyone waited eagerly for the grand wedding of the beautiful young princess. The young man wanted to celebrate his good luck. He went to the market and bought rockets and firecrackers. He bought every kind of firework he could find. He packed all the fireworks into his magic trunk. Then he flew high up into the dark night sky. He wanted to put on a spectacular show for everyone. He lit the fireworks one by one and threw them out of the trunk. The sky filled with bright colors and loud noises. Red, green, and blue lights painted the clouds. The people on the ground cheered and clapped. They had never seen such a beautiful display of lights in the sky. They thought it was magic. The people believed the young man really was a god. They thought he was the god of fire and light. They watched the colorful sparks fall like bright rain. The young man felt very proud of his amazing show. He felt like the most important person in the entire world. He thought nothing could ever go wrong. When the fireworks were all gone, he flew back to the forest. He hid his trunk under the dry leaves just like before. He decided to walk into the town to hear what the people were saying about him. He wanted to hear them praise his wonderful magic. He loved the attention and the loud, happy cheers. He walked through the dark streets and listened to the people talking. Everyone had a different story about the lights in the sky. One man said he saw a god with eyes like shining stars. Another woman said the god had a beard made of flowing water. They all agreed the show was the greatest thing ever. The young man smiled to himself. He was very excited for his wedding the next day. He imagined living in the grand castle with the lovely princess. He thought about eating rich food and sleeping in soft beds. He believed his days of being poor and hungry were gone forever. He walked back to the quiet forest. When he reached the forest, he looked for his magic trunk. He searched under the dry leaves, but he found a terrible sight. A small spark from the fireworks had fallen into the trunk. The dry wood had caught fire and burned completely. The magic trunk was gone. Only a pile of gray ashes remained on the ground. The young man fell to his knees in shock. Without his magic trunk, he could not fly back to the castle tower. He could never see his beautiful princess again. He had lost his only way to reach her high window. His foolish wish to show off had destroyed his most valuable possession. He felt very sad indeed. The next morning, the princess stood on the roof of the castle. She waited all day for her handsome prince to arrive. She looked up at the clouds and hoped to see him flying toward her. But the sky remained empty. The sun went down and the stars came out. The young man never came back to her. The poor princess waited for many days and many weeks. She realized that the prophecy had come true. She was meant to be unhappy in love. She sat in her lonely tower and cried soft tears. She never learned what really happened to the charming stranger who told her such wonderful stories. Her heart was completely broken. The young man could not stay in that town anymore. He was too ashamed of what he had done. He began to travel the world on foot. He had no money and no magic trunk. He walked from village to village wearing his old dressing gown and his worn-out slippers. His life was very hard and sad. To survive, he used his only remaining talent. He told stories to the people he met. He told them about the proud matches and the talking pots. He told them many fairy tales to earn a piece of bread or a warm place to sleep. But his stories were never as happy as the ones he told the princess. This fairy tale by Hans Christian Andersen teaches us many important lessons. The first lesson is about being responsible with what we have. The merchant worked hard to build his wealth, but his son wasted it all on silly things. When we do not value what we have, we can lose it very quickly and become very poor. The magic trunk gave the young man a second chance. He was able to travel to a new place and meet a princess. But he built his new life on a lie. He told the princess he was a god. Starting a relationship with a lie is never a good idea. The truth is always better than lying. The story of the matches is also very important. The matches were too proud of their noble past. They thought they were better than the other kitchen items. But their pride led to their destruction. When they tried to show off, they burned away to nothing. This teaches us that being too proud can lead to a bad ending. The young man made the exact same mistake as the matches. He wanted to show off his power with the fireworks. He wanted everyone to think he was a great god. But his desire to show off caused a fire that burned his magic trunk. His pride destroyed his chance for a happy life with the sweet princess. This story is called a tragedy because it does not have a happy ending. In most fairy tales, the prince marries the princess and they live happily ever after. But Hans Christian Andersen wanted to show us real life. Sometimes our bad choices have lasting consequences. We cannot always fix the mistakes we make when we act foolishly. The young man became a storyteller, but his stories were full of sadness. He used his imagination to entertain people, but his own life was empty. He lost his true love because he could not control his desire to be admired. This is a powerful warning for all of us to stay humble and appreciate our blessings. Learning English with fairy tales is a wonderful way to improve your language skills. Stories like this one use rich vocabulary and clear sentence structures. As you listen to the story, you can learn new words and understand how they are used. You can practice your listening and reading skills at the same time in a fun way. When you study the story of the flying trunk, you can learn words about wealth and poverty. You learn words like merchant coins, slippers, and dressing gown. You also learn words about magic and travel, like flying castle tower and prophecy. These words help you build a strong foundation for speaking and writing in the English language. The story also introduces emotional vocabulary. Words like proud, foolish, sad, and ashamed help describe how the characters feel. Understanding these emotions makes the story more interesting. It also helps you express your own feelings in English. Practice using these emotional words when you talk about your own life or when you describe other stories you read. Another great way to learn is to retell the story in your own words. Try to remember the main events of the young man and his magic trunk. Describe how he met the princess and why he lost everything in the end. Retelling stories helps you practice grammar and improves your memory for new English words and phrases. You can also discuss the moral of the story with your friends. Ask them what they think about the young man and his choices. Do they feel sorry for him, or do they think he deserved his punishment? Having conversations about stories is one of the best ways to become fluent in English. It builds your speaking confidence. Fairy tales are timeless because their lessons apply to everyone. Whether you live in a big city or a small village, you can understand the danger of foolish pride. You can relate to the sadness of losing something important. These universal themes make learning English through stories a deeply meaningful experience for students of all ages and backgrounds. We hope you enjoyed this beautiful and sad tale of the flying trunk. It reminds us to be careful with our actions and to value the truth. It shows us that true magic lies in being honest and humble. Keep these lessons in your heart as you continue your journey of learning the beautiful English language every day. Thank you for watching Fairy Tales English Journey. If you liked this story, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Your support helps us create more wonderful stories for you. Let us know in the comments what you think the young man should have done differently to save his magic flying trunk. Do not forget to subscribe to our channel for more exciting fairy tales and English lessons. We have many more magical stories to share with you. Keep practicing your English and keep exploring the wonderful world of stories. Until next time, stay curious, stay humble, and have a truly magical day. Goodbye, and see you very soon.